Amara never imagined that defending Keanu Reeves would change her life forever. Working the evening shift at Sunny's Diner in downtown San Francisco had always been predictable. The small diner, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage record shop, felt like home. For Amara, a 29-year-old waitress with kind eyes and an easy smile, it was more than just a job. It was her sanctuary, where regulars became family, and each coffee refill came with a side of conversation. But that rainy Tuesday night was different, and our rainy night is stay every day. The usual crowd of locals filled their favorite booths. The smell of fresh coffee and apple pie hanging in the air. The bell above the door chimed, and Amadar looked up from wiping down the counter. Her heart nearly stopping, standing there, shaking raindrops from his dark coat, was Keanu Reeves. Even in simple jeans and a black sweater, with his slightly damp, longer hair, his presence was unmistakable. He chose a quiet corner booth, away from the windows, though a few customers had already noticed, whispering excitedly behind their menus. Amara took a deep breath to steady her nerves. She had admired him from afar, appreciating his kindness to fans, his generosity to children's hospitals, and his quiet acts of charity. But now here he was, just another customer in her diner, needing service. "Good evening," she said, approaching his table with a warm smile. "What can I get for you tonight?" Keanu looked up, his eyes kind but tired. "Just coffee. Black," he said, glancing at the dessert display. "And maybe a slice of apple pie." Coming right up," Mara replied, proud that her voice didn't shake as she walked back to the counter. The energy in the diner shifted. Most customers tried to be subtle, but Earl, who'd been a regular at Sunny's for over 20 years, wasn't subtle. Known for his strong opinions and even stronger coffee, Earl stood up from his usual stool at the counter, his weathered face twisting into a scowl as he walked over to Keanu's table. "Well," Earth called loudly, "if it isn't Mr. Hollywood himself." Ignoring Amara's concerned look, Earl continued, "Must be nice living in your mansion while real folks struggle to get by." Keanu remained calm, sipping his coffee. "Everyone has their struggles," he replied quietly. "We're all just trying our best." But Earl wasn't done. "I read about you online. All that money, and what do you do with it? Probably just buy fancy cars and private jets. Bet you've never worked a real day in your life." The diner fell silent. Amara's hands trembled as she set the pie on the counter. She knew the truth. She had read about Keanu's generosity, how he donated millions to hospitals, taken pay cuts so other actors could be hired, and quietly supported cancer research after his sister's battle with leukemia. Algonquin looked down at his sister and wished he had the joy to make through me. "That's not true," Amara said, her voice steadier than she felt. Keanu's eyes flicked to her with gratitude. "He's donated millions to children's hospitals," she continued, her heart pounding. "He's helped fund cancer research. He even gave away most of his Matrix earnings to the special effects team. Earl turned to her, scowling. Nobody asked you, girl. Since when do you defend the millionaire movie stars? Since people spread lies about good people, Amara shot back, her voice firm. He doesn't brag about his charity work. He does it because he cares. If you spent 5 minutes looking up the truth instead of believing random gossip, you'd know that. The diner's silence grew heavier. Keanu sat quietly, a mix of gratitude and concern in his eyes. Mr. Sullivan, the diner's owner, emerged from the kitchen, his face dark with anger. Amara, he called sharply. My office. Now. Inside the small office, Mr. Sullivan didn't mince words. You're fired. We don't argue with customers here, especially not regulars like Air. Clear out your locker tonight. Amara felt like she had been punched in the gut. You're firing me? For standing up to a bully? For telling the truth? I'm firing you for disrupting my business, Mr. Sullivan replied coldly. Al's been coming here for 20 years. His friends, too. I can't risk losing customers because you want to play hero to some actor. Amara walked out of the office with her head held high, though tears threatened to fall as she gathered her things. As she reached the door, Keanu approached her quietly. Arashad, then, I'm sorry, he said, his voice gentle. You didn't have to defend me, but thank you. What you did took courage. She managed a small smile. Sometimes the truth is worth standing up for. The next morning, Amara woke up to several missed calls from an unknown number. When she finally answered, she nearly dropped her phone. It was Keanu's production company. Mr. Reeves was impressed by your integrity last night, the caller explained. We are producing a documentary series about everyday heroes, people who stand up for what's right, even when it costs them something. We'd like to offer you a position as a research coordinator for the project. Amara could hardly breathe. Very. Mr. Reeves believes your insight into recognizing genuine kindness would be valuable to our team. The position includes full benefits and a relocation assistance if needed. Would you be interested? 2 hours later, Amara walked back into Sunny's diner, this time as a customer. The bell chimed as she entered, and every head turned. Earl sat at his usual spot, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Sullivan stood behind the counter, his face a mix of confusion and regret. Amara, he started. I came to return my uniform, she said calmly, placing the folded clothes on the counter. And to thank you. Thank me? He asked, bewildered. Yes, she replied with a smile. If you hadn't fired me for doing the right thing, I wouldn't have been offered my dream job this morning. As she explained her new position, the diner buzzed with whispers. Earl shifted uncomfortably on his stool, avoiding her eyes before leaving. Amara turned to address the room. You know, she said, it's easy to judge people especially those in the spotlight. But kindness matters, whether or not you're famous or not. And standing up for what's right matters even more. In the months that followed, Amara threw herself into her new role. The documentary series highlighted everyday heroes, teachers spending their own money on student supplies, neighbors helping elderly residents during storms, teenagers standing up to bullies. Each story reminded her of that rainy night in the diner. 1 year later, when the series premiered, Amara sat in a crowded theater, watching ordinary people tell extraordinary stories of courage and kindness. Keanu had insisted that she be credited as a co-producer, though she had protested. "You inspired this," he told her at the premiere. Sometimes one person's courage can start a chain reaction of kindness. You proved that. Looking back, Amara realized that losing her job at Sunny's wasn't the end she had feared. It was the beginning of something far more meaningful. That rainy night had taught her that standing up for what's right might cost you something small, but the reward could be greater than you ever imagined. It is so uplifting to think that a rainy night makes all the difference. Sometimes the biggest changes in life come from the smallest moments of courage. And sometimes defending someone else's honor leads you right where you're meant to be.